Hello and welcome. My name is Steve Pugh and this is the Growth Strategy Podcast. Every week I hopefully speak to interesting people that we talk about their own business, their own journey, their own careers in a way that can hopefully add value to your journey and what you're looking to do. And then likewise, I always love to pick interesting people that I think have genuine value to add. And to almost share their journey and that kind of thing as well. So Andy, who I have the pleasure to speak to today, I appreciate he's a very busy man. So Andy, thank you for that. Basically what we're going to do is talk through his journey about how he got started, causes that he's super passionate about, and we're going to talk about the Philanthropic Society, but also CEO Sleepout and lots of other things. And then likewise for his own career journey, at some point, he obviously decided to go into public service and he's now the elected mayor of Middlesbrough. And actually just that kind of thing. And likewise, if you have any questions for Andy, you can send them in the chat on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, any of the platforms, and they should pop up on my screen. And if you join us for the next 30, 40 minutes, hopefully it'll be an interesting conversation. So Andy, there we go. People can now see you and hear you.
Hi.
Perfect. No, genuinely, thank you for your time. I can imagine what's your schedule been like today? I imagine you're rammed busy all day, every day.
I tend to be very busy. Yeah, I kind of like it that way. I like to be busy. Sometimes I find myself too busy, and that's a problem because it means that I don't get a chance to think or catch up. And sometimes it means that I don't do some things as well as I could. So there's a trade-off, isn't there, between doing lots and doing a good amount well.
Yes, yeah.
And sometimes I get on the wrong side. But the short answer is, yeah, I'm very busy. I had a busy day.
Because before we joined the call, I was saying that I moved up to the Northeast about 10, 12 years ago. I spent 3.5 years at what's now the Combined Authority, but at the time it was the LEP, Tees Valley Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because you see the papers, you see people in the region, you see people do stuff. And I'm always fascinated in, because I actually really loved working in public service and in economic development, because actually I love the community element to kind of give back. And then I think from my research, you've been elected mayor for quite a while now, but actually I've loved to see what you do and the things you get involved with, and you're very active on Twitter and even things down to, as silly as it sounds, bin collections and stuff. It's where I really wanted to kind of pick your brains as someone who's a very successful businessman, almost how and why you kind of got into that. So hopefully, it'll be interesting for you as well. One of the things I love to do, because especially for younger people, I imagine that you didn't always want to be mayor, but actually I love to kind of pick people's brains on where they grew up, what they were like at school, because often with entrepreneurs, you find like successive traits, the people are often very similar at school, and maybe they're a little bit naughty, a little bit cheeky, or often they're into sports, that kind of thing. And I love just to kind of learn about people's journeys. But before we do, would you be happy to give a quick kind of 30, 60 second intro just about who you are, what you do now? Because it helps really when I clip this up to go onto YouTube. I've got that nice little segment that it's...
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Andy Preston. I am 55. I'm married with two boys aged 17 and 13. I'm the elected mayor of Middlesbrough. It's like an executive role, not a sort of chain-wearing, garden party opening kind of mayor, although maybe I guess I do occasionally do that sort of thing. Before this job, I set up and ran a couple of charities called the Middlesbrough and TEESSIDE Philanthropic Foundation, which gets money from businesses to distribute across communities. And the other one is CEO Sleepout, which gets executives to sleep outdoors overnight across the country to raise funds to fight poverty and homelessness. And before that, I worked in finance and international finance as a trader on the financial markets. And I built and ran a hedge fund business for a bank.
Wow.
That's probably a bit more than 60 seconds, but that gives you a little feel for stuff. Yeah.
But I genuinely enjoyed it. I love picking people's brains because it's brilliant to learn from different people's experiences. And likewise, the thing that I also find really interesting is that it's how many people actually will tune in and watch this and really get value from learning more about you and what you've done and what kind of drives you. So were you born and bred in the Northeast?
Yeah, well, sorry. First of all, is it okay if I drink my
You can
coffee?
drink as much. Honestly, there are no rules.
You might not
with this.
realise while you were talking, my wife snuck in and put a coffee down here.
Trust me,
I just got in.
it's fine.
To do this. You see, I've been racing around over, all over Middlesbrough, and I just got in to do this and do something else. Sorry, what was the question?
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up Middlesbrough, all over Middlesbrough, different parts of town, and I left when I was about 17.
Wow.
And yes, so very much Middlesbrough based, Middlesbrough focused. Family had always been from the area, going back a few generations from elsewhere, Ireland and parts of the UK for the family, but very much Middlesbrough through and through, family, friends, and everything else.
No, fantastic. And I believe from your LinkedIn, you went to university in Edinburgh.
I went to Edinburgh Uni. Yeah.
What did you do?
Love that. Still do. And it was a place. I went to university a little bit late. I wasn't very good at school.
Okay.
I was quite very, very, very much an underperformer. Failed most of my exams, and was just always. I now know that I've been diagnosed with ADHD, which explains a lot. And I was always consistently in trouble for low-level, misbehaviour. Sometimes more serious stuff, but usually it was just low-level, being accused of not listening, misbehaving, distracting others. And I now know that was probably just a symptom of my hyperactivity and. Unfortunately, the way my brain is, I can be a little bit inattentive. If something else grabs my attention, I'll look away. Gosh, that's interesting, And we all do that. All humans do that. But yeah, I think people who are diagnosed, they display and feel a greater propensity towards that natural thing. So so school was tough for me. Actually, I didn't enjoy it at all. I have friends and family, Stephen, who say that it was like the best time of their life. And I always find that quite baffling. I understand that's how they felt, and I understand that for them that's real, but I struggle to feel empathy with that, because I hated it. I hated feeling corralled. I hated feeling that the day was planned for me. I hated, I felt a lot of pressure to conform, and I always felt like the naughty boy. I always felt like I was doing something wrong, which wasn't a nice feeling. I didn't thrive on being naughty. I didn't love it, and it was there, and that wasn't nice. And when I think back to school now, I think about grey corridors. I think about a depressing feeling, So school definitely wasn't for me and didn't bring out the best in me.
But the funny thing is, a lot of entrepreneurs have that kind of slightly rebellious streak against, you don't want to conform, you want to do your own thing. And it's really kind of common. And it's again, fascinating to hear these threads which run through lots of different people. And I imagine now, I think one of the things I always find quite funny is that when you are, I guess, under 18, the focus is so much on school that school isn't for everyone. That likewise, if you're not academic and it's not really working for you, it's making people know that there are other options out there, that, likewise, you might be good at skilled trades, or you could be a good talker, or whichever. But that's why I love to share the journey, because you've been incredibly successful. And, likewise, maybe at school, maybe teachers didn't see you in that box, if that makes sense. And that's why I love to kind of talk about it. So what did you do at uni?
I did philosophy and English.
Yeah, nice.
I was really interested in the bigger questions. I'm always interested in the unknown. Philosophy is about the unresolvable in some ways. It's about the unresolvable, that stuff that can be debated and discussed, and people can hold positions. But as soon as you can prove something, then it becomes a science, really. So philosophy and English. I had a real passion as well for written material, writing, literature. I still have that, but my ability to read is hampered by it always was, but it seems more so these days, hampered by my hyperactivity and inattentiveness. So I actually do read now, but I'll tend to read non-fiction. I'll tend to dip in and out of non-fiction stuff, and listen to a lot of podcasts, which seems to suit my brain because I can listen to something while I'm doing something else and learn a lot from podcasts.
But again, that's part of the reason why I love to do this, because not everyone likes to read. And it's really funny actually, because my wife is a partner in a law firm and she loves to read fiction. She loves Agatha Christie and that kind of thing. I don't hate it, but it just I have zero interest in it. I love factual stuff. I love mindset stuff. I love anything that I see is useful. And it's just really fascinating just to kind of hear different people's. So then how did you get into finance?
Well, in the 80s, I guess I was always very, very ambitious. And it was kind of there in my belly, this kind of like genuinely like a gut feeling that I wanted to achieve things. Probably at that age, I equated success with money. So I really wanted money, and I always tried to earn money. I always, I would cut neighbors' gardens, and I had a paper round for years. I always wanted to earn money, and so as I grew and that matured, I wanted to be successful. And to me, at that age, I now know this isn't the case, but at that age, success was about how much money you had. That was what I understood. And so I wanted to go into a career where I thought I could earn a lot of money. It was the 80s. You're too young to remember, but basically there was this burgeoning of a sense of acquiring, driving the best car, earning the most money, especially at a young age. The younger, the better, And so I used to see programs about these. There was this thing called a yuppie, which was this with
the big mobile phone
kind of like label that was attached to people at a young age that were succeeding and prospering. And I wanted to be like that. And so I wanted to. There were two careers really. For me, as a kind of like man who felt ambitious and wanted to earn a load of money like last week, and the two careers at that stage that seemed to me were going to be on the financial markets or in advertising. Advertising was big and booming back then. So that's what I did. And that was my motivation. I felt I'd be good at it. I don't know why, but I felt I'd be good. So it was a really interesting, actually, if I may talk about it for a second.
Honestly, that's the whole point.
It was exceptionally difficult to get into those positions where you had the chance to prosper and do well. And I think looking back, it must have taken an awful lot of pushing, cajoling, countless applications. And I always remember applying. This is a really interesting lesson for me and possibly for others, is that I was applying for jobs with all these big banks and organizations as a trainee. And basically I'd get the interview, maybe 2 interviews, and I'd get a letter saying, thanks really much, lovely to meet you, we love you, but we're not going to offer you a place. And I was always like absolutely gutted. And after a while, I got so fed up of being nice and polite and getting rejected that my last interview, this sort of British-based stockbroking company, I basically just decided that I was going to talk about my agenda. So pretty much whatever they asked me, I was respectful to the question, but pretty much whatever they asked me, I said what I wanted to say, which was that you should really give me a job because I'm going to work incredibly hard. I'll do anything you want, and I will be available to do 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, and I will make a success of it. And that's why you should hire me. And I got invited back for another interview and then a selection day, and I kept saying the same thing, and I got offered a job. And thank God that I decided to stop being too polite and actually get my message across. And I hope that's a message that I give sometimes to my boys and to other people. And people can take or leave my advice. Obviously, I'm not saying it's right, but I think it can really work, is that you can be too polite. You should always be respectful of the questions, respectful of the situation and the context, like an interview. But don't let yourself walk out of that room without getting your key messages across. Find a way of answering the question that gives your key messages in any situation.
I think actually,
because if you don't, you're on the way home, aren't you, thinking, oh, if only I'd said that, if only they'd asked me this. And they're not going to ask you the dream question. You have to give them the dream answer.
But it's true. No, honestly, it's brilliant. But it's that, again, it's that balance of, having the confidence to share your passion, because now as an employer, you want people that want to work hard and they've got that drive, and you resonate with them on a value, because a lot of people on paper, they look brilliant. They've got degrees or PhDs or whatever, but they're practically useless, or they don't work hard. If someone turned up and said, look, I really want to graft, I would love that now. Honestly, it's brilliant advice. Just out of interest, what do your boys want to do when they kind of grow up?
They don't know. My youngest boy's 13, so he doesn't really. He's. I say this with a bit of embarrassment, but he's actually a fantastic gamer. He's very good at gaming, and he has a passion for it. And he's one of these kids that could, at a very, very early age, could pick up your iPhone, and he kind of knew the codes, and he could always just make sense of technology. And he's also very. He's entertaining. People really like him. He's not a stand-up comedian or actor, but he's very witty. Yeah, absolutely, he can make people laugh. So I would think that perhaps he could be some kind of. I think at a young age he could do some kind of broadcasting, gaming. I think he could do that, but I don't know what he wants to do. He's very young, and my eldest lad is 17. He's very interested in politics. He's interested in business. He's doing psychology A-level, which he really loves. Actually, really loves that. So I don't know. I try not to corral them towards anything. I only ever try and corral people to life choices.
But
I always say, I'll put. Sorry,
at least they've got a good mentor, and when you have, what's always quite funny, and this will be true, is that kids will never listen to their own dad, but they will massively respect someone else's. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what your own parents tell you. You always think that you know better and that kind of thing, but actually. I think you've got great life experience to tell and to share and that kind of thing. So what was your career in finance like then? Because obviously you went on to do really, really good things.
So basically, what do I remember? Starting as a graduate trainee over by London Bridge. And I couldn't believe it. I'd tried so hard to get in, and I got in with 6 other graduates at the time. And I just made sure I worked the hardest. I was always the first in the office, always the last to leave. If it was quiet, I used to sweep up. I used to say to anyone, all the whole team, traders and salespeople, say, "Does anybody want tea or coffee? Can I get anyone's lunch?" And I was just determined to show everyone that I was there to learn. That they were there. I could gain from them by learning. That I was willing to do whatever it took. And I got some breaks, and I sort of prospered, and you get a slightly bigger role, maybe, and then you get a slightly bigger role, and then it just goes like that, really. And I think people spot the ones who are determined, positive, cooperative. They also spot the ones who say, I'm tired today, so I'm not coming in. Yeah. By the way, if you're ill, don't go to work. I'm not suggesting, but I think that to get on at work, for most of us, you have to show that you are up for it, that you have sufficient ability, but you will also work your butt off to get your point across, to be given the chances. And and that was me. I was really, really, really driven. When I think back now, sometimes I get a little bit embarrassed, and I was always asking for pay rises and stuff. And sometimes now I think back, oh my word, how did I dare? But I used to get them. Yeah.
But it's using your initiative and working hard and being proactive. And I was probably the same. Like, I was always in Cubs and Scouts growing up, and it was that, do your duty and do your best every single day. And I'm the same, as that I would even in I used to work in Quick Save, which is a supermarket. I would happily swap. I hate being quiet, so always sweep the floor, speak to customers, do whatever. And it's just, I think that's something that you either have instilled in you or you don't. But the truth is, your seniors will have noticed that all the way through, and especially when you're younger, you often don't think that people are watching you, but they are. They are looking at your progress in the same way that before the interview, I've been tracking your progress for quite a long time. You see the names in the region, and I just knew that I'd love to have you on as a guest, but obviously you didn't know that. But the point is, it does happen, and with social media and Twitter and LinkedIn and stuff, you know, you can have a bigger impact in the community. And, you know, so I've always like really respected what you're doing, because you don't have to do it. But the point is, do you feel that you still have the same mentality now as what you did back then?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm definitely, obviously I'm older. I think I'm a bit wiser. I think I'm a little bit more rounded, a bit less. I was probably, when I was young, a bit chippy, a bit. I think I was less comfortable. I'm more comfortable in myself, which is a nice thing, actually. I think it makes me a nicer person, and less, probably less. That makes me less tense and maybe a bit nicer to be around. I would hope. Yeah. So I think I've progressed as a person, but I'm definitely the same. I've got a lot of the same urges. I don't know what it is in my psychology or wiring that makes me want to achieve. It's interesting. I mean, inside me, you know, I don't think I've really ever achieved anything, and I feel that I have lots to prove. I feel I have a lot to prove, and it's not that I necessarily feel that I'm lacking. It's not that I necessarily feel that I don't know, I need to win a particular person over. But I definitely don't feel like a successful person in any way. I mean, people could point to say one or two things. So, well, you did well at that. I say, yeah, I did pretty well. But I don't feel successful or victorious or remotely satisfied in anything.
If you, at 16, 17, 18, when you wanted to be the yuppie and you wanted to, you know, do a certain thing, that person, if they were to see you now, what do you think they would think?
Probably think I'm really boring, old. What would they think of me?
Because I think people are often really harsh on themselves in a way that your best friend, if they'd achieved what you had, I'm sure you would actually pat them on the back and respect what they've done. But we're often very hard and critical on ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Sometimes, you know, I do think that, although I can point to times when I've worked hard or tried hard at something, I never feel like I've achieved something that was thought to be insurmountable. Or I always think, oh, it wasn't that hard. It was quite easy, really. And if I tried a bit harder, I might have done it better. That's maybe a flaw in my mindset. I don't know.
We'll move on, because obviously we'll talk about some of the charity stuff as well. So what was you obviously went into entrepreneurship at a certain point. How did you make that kind of the journey?
Well, do you know what? I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know if I would count myself as an entrepreneur. You know, you get these people who set up big businesses and grow it from their garage to, you know, something huge. And I definitely don't think of myself as one of those. I don't think I've ever done that. I think what I have done, I mean, if an entrepreneur starts things, I'm definitely that way inclined. I start things. I like to make things happen. I like to spot something that can be better, or a problem that can be fixed, or an opportunity that's going begging. I like to spot that. I like to try and get in and bridge that gap. So I'm definitely that way inclined mentally, psychologically. But I definitely don't think of myself as an enterprise guru. You know, you get, I don't know, these people who've just set up great businesses and employ loads of people, and they've started from scratch and they've battled against the odds. I definitely don't put myself in that group.
Okay. So then I'm trying to think how to fast forward this through. So at what point did you start to think about applying to become mayor and the whole process to go through that?
So I kind of like ended up, it was deliberate, but I moved back up north. When I was working in London, I sort of packed it all in 2005, end of 2005, early 2006. I packed it all in. And I bought a house up here. And so we had the house in London, the house up here. And then I went back to work in London. I sort of did it with some friends. And I was commuting between the two. My time was sort of split between the two. And then in 2008, stopped doing anything in London. It was too difficult. It was the financial crisis. And so I ended up spending all of my time up here, up north. And sort of, after a few days of not doing very much, you start thinking, well, what do I do next? So I looked at a few things, got involved in a few little bits and bobs. And then I saw that the financial cuts were coming and the impact on communities. And I thought about how a lot of businesses are still making reasonable profit and they've got cash in the bank. And so the idea of the new charities started to get going. So over the next couple of years, I supported one charity in particular, but I watched and learned from doing that, and then launched another charity about a year and a half, 2 years later, which we called it's now called TEESSIDE charity. It was called the Middlesbrough and TEESSIDE Philanthropic Foundation. That's the one I founded. And the idea was to go to businesses and to get them to give an amount of money every year, minimum of £5,000, and get lots of them to do that, put it onto a pot, and use that money to support community groups, community initiatives, apprenticeships, sports clubs, all of that stuff, to keep vital services going during the cutbacks, and also just lend support to great community groups who had nowhere else to go for funds. And so I ended up doing that, and that got me into contact with a lot of community groups, and it gave me a much bigger insight into what was going on. Previous charity work had given me an insight into deprivation, the impacts of that on human psychology and on community senses of aspiration. But when I got involved in the charity that I set up, I was immersed into these communities and interacting with community groups. And I could see exactly, in my opinion, some of the things that were going wrong and some of the things that might help fix that. And so I became interested in local politics. Why isn't this being done, or why can't that be done? What are the challenges? And my interest then just grew and grew in the end, where I thought, well, I'll do it. I'll get involved. Yeah. Because so it was a gradual thing that happened over time.
But that's still incredible in its own way, because it's both the empathy to actually realize and look at local communities and see the impact that you can make. Because actually, I used to work at a company called Nortec Solutions. So it was Brian and Elaine Bunn who used to donate to the Philanthropic. And it was just, I would see the newsletters and the different things that you do. And it's when you can help young sports people buy equipment. The reason, even when you said before about you're not sure if you'd made an impact, to those people, you don't forget that kind of thing. And the ability to literally plant seeds in the community to help people out with stuff. To you, it's one of many, but to them, it can be a really big deal. And that's why I think it's super kind of cool that you've done it. But likewise, it's the fact that it was a conscious choice to do it. A lot of people wouldn't. They would just sit and look after themselves and that kind of thing. And that's why I think it's really interesting. And then likewise, would you like to tell us about the CEO Sleepout?
Yes, the CEO Sleepout. So it's a charity based on an Australian phenomenon. A guy called Bernie Fionn set up an event called CEO Sleepout, not a charity, but an event where he got executives to sleep outdoors overnight. And Bernie Fionn used to raise the money for a big homelessness charity in Australia, St Vincent de Paul. It's an international organisation. None over there is Vinnie's. And I'd actually was talking with somebody called Joanna Wake, and we were talking about arranging some kind of sleep out in the Middlesbrough area. This is going back to probably 2012 or something, about creating some kind of sleep out to support a homelessness charity in the area that was struggling financially. We sort of shared a few ideas. And then I heard of this guy in Australia called Bernie Fionn. So I called him, we had a good chat. I said, can I use the name? He said, yeah. So we set up an event called CEO Sleepout. The first event was 2013 at the Riverside Stadium. And I've been involved in raising money with charities for ages. And it's difficult, actually. It's difficult. And we did this event, and there were 30 people. It was one night, raised £30,000. There was a lot of goodwill. People, they didn't enjoy sleeping out, but they enjoyed the event and the camaraderie and everything like that. And I thought, right, I'm onto something here. So basically then I decided I wanted to form it as a standalone charity. recruited a couple of trustees. I'll name check them. That's Nick Tunley, a lawyer at Endeavour Partnership, and Abu Ali, a corporate finance guy up in Newcastle. I can't remember where he works right now, so I won't mention them. And they became trustees, and we formed the charity. And basically, with their help, I went around the country, Newcastle in the north, further north. We went to Alnwick, in fact, to Alnwick Garden. We had events up there in Northumberland. We've put events on down in Portsmouth, in the south, in the west as far as Cardiff, Wembley Stadium. So these big sleepout events. And it was basically, in the early days, it was me running around, literally getting in the car. I didn't have any spare time, but and driving to Cardiff and meeting local people and saying hello and getting them to get involved and back it and help recruit local business people. Did that all over the country. That's gone really well. I think we raised a few million quid, I think. So, something like that. I'll need to check. I'm the chair of trustees now, but I'm not involved in running it. It's now run by somebody called Bianca Robinson, and she runs that full time, does a much better job than I did, because I was just running around, here and there and everywhere. But I was great at getting it going. But once it was up and running, it needed a structure and some processes and some staff. But it's a great charity that supported, I'm going to guess it supported up to 100 groups across the whole country that do a little bit in their communities about anti-poverty, anti-homelessness. So it's a great, great charity. It links business people with who are obviously affluent, and it links them with the concept of abject poverty, destitution, in a great, really healthy way that creates empathy and understanding and a willingness to make change. So it's a great charity that I think has gone well. COVID's been really tough on it because obviously we couldn't host the sleepout events, but they're getting going, and this year's bigger and better than ever. So that's really exciting. So yes, CEO Sleepout has been a great charity. It is a great charity, and it's growing. So that's fantastic. And it's all been done on a very modest staff wage bill and infrastructure, very modest infrastructure. I like stuff that's simple and doesn't need much infrastructure.
I was going to say, why did you do it?
Why did I do it? Again, I think I saw an opportunity. I thought, right, okay, this could happen. This could happen and do some good, and it's not happening. I'll jump in and get it going. And obviously, probably my intention at the time was that I would get it going, and 3 weeks later, somebody else would take it on. And I did it probably on my own for 3 or 4, I can't remember how many years, 3 or 4 years. And it became a problem. It was very, very difficult, actually, to keep it going. I got great help. I've got a personal PA, Diane, who's always been exceptionally committed and giving up lots of her own time to help keep that charity going too. So yeah, but we did it. It's a good charity. It raises lots of money. It goes direct to great, street-based initiatives, and it operates in across the country.
No, so especially with, at the moment, you got the cost of living going up, that both the Philanthropic and CEO Sleepout, they're such good and important causes that genuinely will help a lot of people that need it. And it's just, and this is what amazes me, that but you still don't think you've done anything, is the thing that blows my mind. So what I'm going to say is, when we clip this all up and we'll put it out, I think hopefully we'll get messages from people that actually do appreciate what you have done and what you continue to do, because all the way through that, you didn't have to do any of this, you chose to. And I think that kind of says a lot. So then what was the process like to go through to run for elected mayor? And then actually, when you did start, is it what you thought it'd be?
So the process, yeah. So there's 2 ways to look at that. There's the bureaucratic process. So, you need your forms filling and you need loads of signatories. I can't remember how many. It's a lot of people have to sign a form and say they'll vouch for you at a personal level, and they give their name and address and they sign. And that wasn't that easy. I mean, lots of people support you, but trying to track them down and actually meet them and get their signature, and like, and what is this form again? And what am I signing? And, so there's bureaucratic hurdles. You have to pay some money, a deposit, not a huge amount. It might have been 500 quid. But it's a bureaucratic and legislative minefield running a campaign. For example, you have, and you get loads of dodgy information as well. The rules are quite vague on political campaigning. Some of the rules are crystal clear and some of them are very vague. And what you find is that some people who are paid to advise you, maybe they work for a council or something, they will give you their interpretation, but they'll give it to you as if it's the law, when in fact it isn't. It's usually just what makes their life easier. And it's trying to work out what's the law and what isn't. But there are laws that govern elections, and everyone's always trying to trip each other up. So if I put up a big post that says "Vote for Steve Pugh," right? Yeah, let's say you're standing in some kind of election.
One day,
somewhere on that poster, if it's during the election, somewhere on that poster, there has to be, in the tiniest print, if necessary, printed by, published by, on behalf of. Now, the public never see it because it's so tiny. And truthfully, I can see why they do that, but it doesn't really make any difference. But if you don't do that, what happens is all your competitors call up the relevant body, who then go to the police, or they go straight to the police and they say, Steve Pugh has broken electoral law, which is technically true. You've not really done anything terribly wrong, but you've broken a rule. And you get a call from the police in the middle of your campaign. But people do that with all kinds of things. For example, you're not allowed to incentivize voters with hospitality. So if I was standing for election, you might be a voter of mine, you and your neighbours. If I say, come to the pub with me and I'll buy you all a dinner and we'll have a brilliant night, and I spend, a huge amount of money wining and dining you all in the hope that you're all going to become evangelists for me and go out and spread the word. That clearly breaks election rules. However, what you can do is put on refreshments. So if I hold a meeting in a pub, it's perfectly legitimate, to put on soft drinks. There's no rule against putting on booze, actually, but you probably get questions. It might be hard to explain. And there's no rule against putting on sandwiches either, by the way. But you see, there's a grey area in that I can't take you for an expensive meal, but I could, in theory, get you and your neighbours to the pub and put on some sandwiches and soft drinks without any questions. But however, having said all of that, what somebody did, I'll say somebody, I'll tell you it was in a minute, I won't give you their name, is that I had a meeting in a pub with some residents. They wanted to meet me. I said, okay, I'll meet you in the local pub down at Berwick Hills. And we met in this back room of the pub, and we all said, and they all got themselves a whatever drink. And I didn't have a drink. I went to the bar and I said, does anybody want a drink? Go in the bar. No, they were all fine. As I walked through from the little back room to the bar, this guy came, I was stood at the bar, and this guy came up to me and he said, are you Andy Preston? I said, yes, I am. He said, I want a word with you. I'm not very happy. I said, all right, okay, well, I'll talk to you in a minute. I said, I'm actually can I just order a drink? I said, what? And I said, do you want one? And he said, no, thanks. Fine. I got my Diet Coke. And we went through the room, and he then proceeded to disrupt the meeting, just spouting incoherent nonsense. He was very nervous. He'd been put up to it, and he'd been fed a few lines, and he didn't really understand them. I'm not sure how savvy this guy was, but he was definitely in an uncomfortable place. He was anxious, but was borderline offensive and very, very disruptive. So basically, the other people who asked me to come and meet him, they kicked him out with a flea in his ear. But I got a call the next day or 2 days later from the police saying they were going to investigate me trying to bribe voters. And so what had happened was I'd literally not bought anyone a drink. There was a meeting in a pub. I was at the bar. Some guy came up to me and I said, well, there's a meeting next door if you want to come in. If you really want to have a go at me, do it next door. We'll have a chat, sit down, calm down. While I'm here, can I get you a drink? A Diet Coke, by the way.
And it was that, yeah.
And it was that. Anyway, understandably, that was dismissed as absolute nonsense.
But someone still did it.
But well, who was that guy? Who was that guy? I was fighting Labour at the time. As an ex-Labour member, I've got nothing against the Labour Party. But Labour were fighting hard against me and spreading all sorts of untruths. And they said it was nothing to do with them, nothing to do with them. This guy, after a bit of digging, not much, turned out to be the brother-in-law of the Labour candidate who was against me. Now, he swore blind it was nothing to do with him and it was nothing to do with the Labour Party. But obviously, it looks very, very odd, doesn't it, when the Labour candidate's brother-in-law reports me to be. My point is that you have to be so careful. Campaigns, if you are a threat to power, Stephen, things get really nasty. If people are fighting for power, it gets tense. But if people are going to lose power or fear they get really nasty, and it's horrible. And you asked me about my experiences and how I found it. It's a privilege to do the job. It's a horrible job. As an independent who gets non-stop abuse, lies, people putting up, I've got a nice house, people put up pictures of my house on social media. That's not a crime, but it's designed to intimidate my family and say, oh, well, Andy Preston lives in a nice house, you should hate him too. And, things like that, they show a lot of the people involved in politics for what they are, which is very small-minded, people to be pitied, but people who can cause trouble. And it's a horrible business. It really is a horrible business.
So, for instance, that again proves the point that you probably don't have to do it. You choose to do it because I'm putting words in your mouth, but you want to make a difference and you want to look after. Are they technically called constituents or residents?
I think probably residents is more appropriate, but I do hear constituents used a lot. Usually that's used in a constituency. Whether I have a constituency, I don't know. But MPs have got a constituency, haven't they? But residents certainly.
So the people that you look after, what are the main issues that kind of plague their lives at the moment?
The one I get most messages on, and I spent an hour this afternoon on with somebody, is potholes, road surfaces. That is like the biggest by a mile. It comes in and out of fashion, and this time of year it's always in fashion because the roads are always at their worst state this time of year. Just come out of winter, the roads have had a whole winter of rain and frost and ice to make the potholes worse, but you don't start repairing them till the spring proper. So, but potholes are a problem. They bother people. The biggest issue that affects mental health, affects our economy, affects jobs, and affects community cohesion is crime and fear of crime. And there's some of the things I see, some of the abuse I see, some of the horrific victimization that I see, and people scared to leave their homes is thoroughly depressing. And I am committed to do everything I can. It's often not easy. I don't control the police. I don't control their budget. I can't go to the government and ask for 50 million quid. Well, I can, but there's not much point. So I crime and fear of crime. Antisocial behaviour is the phrase that's used. Antisocial behaviour is, I don't know, a kid knocking at your door and running off, or dog mess on the pavement. That's antisocial. The stuff that we tend to call antisocial behaviour is intimidating, it's terrifying, and it genuinely pushes people to the brink of suicide. It's a crime. And that's the biggest issue everywhere in the country. That's the biggest issue. But
the thing is, like, it would take, and this is someone that also worked for 3.5 years in local authority, government type thing. It takes people that are entrepreneurial, are willing to take a risk and put their neck on the line and go over and above to tackle issues that are big issues like this. But then likewise, again, it's the ability that you can impact. How many residents do you have in Middlesbrough?
In our little council, very, very narrow boundaries, we have 141,000 people.
Wow. But that's 104,000 people that you can improve their lives, even if it is only potholes. I love it. I think it's brilliant. And likewise, part of the reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast is just that from what I'd seen and when I'd done my homework, you haven't had to do almost any of it, but you chose to because my perception was that you wanted to make an impact and you wanted to look out for the community. And likewise, often you can have a much bigger impact to 100,000 people that in many ways they can't always help themselves, and I think that's why it's kind of really cool. And I certainly applaud, as will many people, kind of what you've done and stuff. I am conscious of time, and I've got my little clock there. One of the things that I love to do towards the end of every interview is ask you a few different questions, and these all get clipped up to go onto YouTube and that kind of thing. It's also my favorite bit, and it's, would you be happy to share the best piece of advice you've ever had?
Right. Okay. The thing about advice is, I always say to people giving advice, is that listen to everyone, but bear in mind most of it's a load of rubbish. And maybe my advice is a load of rubbish. I would say, am I allowed to give a few things?
Whatever you want, honestly.
Okay, so I would say 2 things, perhaps, maybe 3. First one is, do your best. Work really hard. Do your best. And if you've done your best, and you put your hand on your heart and say, I did my best. If people aren't happy with that, you move on. Whether that is a personal relationship, an academic situation, an employment situation, if you've genuinely done your best and it doesn't work for the other side, move on. Do not cling on to it, because if you've done your best, it's never going to work out. You can't do any better than that. We've all been in situations where you want to salvage it, you want to retain it, you want to cling on because you're scared of change, or I don't know, whatever. There's some status attached to it. It's definitely, I think, something to move on. The other thing I think for me is, as I've got older, and I touched on earlier, that I think as you get older, most of us get a bit more comfortable with ourselves. I think when I was younger, most young people, looking for an identity and trying to impress and make their way in the world. And I think that can cause you to sometimes try to almost cover up parts of yourself, try and be more like other people when it's not you. And I think being true to yourself, and that doesn't, I don't mean never reining in your behavior, and I don't mean don't watch what you say. But what I mean is, when someone is genuine, they're far more likable. People who try and act a bit, I don't know, whatever, it's not genuine, and I think it comes across as not genuine, and I think it impacts how the world treats them. So I think being genuine is really, really important. And the other one is to have goals. I had the privilege of chatting, a really good chat with the international athlete Richard Kilty yesterday. We had a good old chat about everything. And one of the things we both agreed on is and he's had all his life, is have a goal, work out what it is, tell people about it, share that goal, and then have a plan as to how you're going to get there. If you don't have a goal, it's just a dream. If you write it down and share it with other people, it becomes a goal. And when you start writing down how to get there, then you've got a plan. And it's a little bit every day. It's a little bit every day. And every day doesn't have to be a battle, but you should try and do something positive every day, to just a tiny thing towards your goal.
Love it. The next question, if you were to give advice to your younger self, and you could pick any age, any background at school, in London, maybe when you're thinking about moving back to the Northeast, even when you were thinking about applying, to be mayor or not, if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Be yourself, work hard, be brave, be ambitious. Yeah.
Is that what you'd say to
be
your
yourself
boys?
is really important. Be yourself is really important.
I agree. I think what I found from my own experience, so I grew up a single parent family in Liverpool. And when I went to uni, I was around people from completely different backgrounds. And I was the poorest kid in the class. And what I really kind of found was that because I wanted to fit in, I probably wasn't myself, just because you want to fit in. And it's when you go 20 years, you can kind of look back, and I can see it in other people that they're not doing it maliciously. It's just a case of it's the environment they find themselves in. But actually, I think that's really, really good advice.
Yeah, I totally understand it. I totally understand. We've all done it. You're immersed in a situation and you want to make other people comfortable. So you act like them. You do, right? Whether you behave like them, you talk like them. We all do it. We try and make others comfortable, don't we? So we don't want to stand out, and yeah, it's natural, but it's definitely good if you can be the real you, isn't it? And people like you more.
I think it's true. Is there anything you would like to talk about or plug before we go? Any charity stuff? Anything coming up in Middlesbrough? Anything you wish?
I would say that look, we all know things are going to get very tough. I think that employment is going to remain really high. So I think there are going to be a lot of jobs around. I don't think getting a job is going to be difficult, and possibly extra hours for people won't be that difficult either. But rates of pay for many of us are not going to keep up with inflation. Benefits are a million miles away from keeping up with inflation. So there are going to be tough times out there for huge sections of society. And I know everyone says, oh, the government should do it, and so they should, but we all have a responsibility in a small way to work out, how can I share some of my good fortune with others? A little bit of money, or a lot of money if you're very wealthy, and pick a good charity. In Teesside, we've got the Middlesbrough Teesside Philanthropic Foundation. If you want to raise some money, get involved with CEO Sleepout. It goes right in the front line, anti-poverty, anti-homelessness measures. Google CEO Sleepout and sign up for an event. They're fun. You meet people. They're great for networking. But most importantly, you can raise some funds for vital anti-poverty work. So that would be a message I would give out.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. Thank you for today. Good luck to your boys, whatever they kind of decide to do next. And I will continue to follow your progress on Twitter and different things, and keep up the good work and stay in touch.
Thank you, Steve. Lovely to chat. Thank you.
Cheers, Andy. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.